Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the Game Week 24 pod of the FPL Wire. I'm your host, Zoph. My co-host, Late Riser, and I are joined by an old friend of the pod, the deputy editor of Fantasy Football Scout, Tom Freeman. How's it going, Tom?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Zoph. Thanks to you both for inviting me on. First time this season, I think, isn't it? I think it was last season I was there.
It is.
So, well overdue, but yeah, all good here, thank you.
How's it been now? You're the second year in the gig, settling in better?
Yeah, it's all good over there now. Yeah, it's a busy period of the season, and we seem to get doubles announced every single week, loads of blanks, so loads to get stuck into. But yeah, it's been great, thank you.
And how are you doing rank-wise, and how was your game week?
So decent game week. We'll come on to it a bit later. We've got quite similar teams, I think, haven't we? So I got 88 points this week, and just outside of the top 100k, I think. I'm about 121k. So moving in the right direction again. had a bad few weeks after the World Cup, but starting to claw it back now. And quite an exciting period now, isn't it? With chips being deployed and things like that. So, good.
It is. And LR, you smashed it this week. Very Bradman-esque score.
Yeah, got the rub of the green this week with pretty much everybody coming through. Got a little lucky with the Mahrez penalty, but I think the miss that he had a few minutes later in the second half sort of made up for it. It's been a good jump from about 300k to now 67k in the last 2 weeks. So happy with where I am. But I think, because the points are so compact, you have a couple of bad weeks and you can fall as easily. So not trying to get ahead of myself here.
Right.
Trying not to get ahead of myself. Yeah. How's your week?
I think I got 84 after the hit. Taking a hit paid off again, moving Martinelli to Saka. And I have to thank you for the Shaw recommendation. And that is why I'm wearing red today. My way of saying thanks to you for that. So cheers. Right.
So Rashford captain at the weekend, Zoph?
I don't know. And we talk about that. Let's not spoiler our discussion. It's a big captaincy discussion this week, but we'll talk about that. Cheeky. Cool. Let's start with a sponsor plug and then lots to dive into.
All data you see on the FPL Wire is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. The new improved members area is now up and running, and the new comparison tool lets you compare key stats for up to 3 players. Player projections are also live, and as always, you can access the custom stats table we create or make one for yourself. Sign up for membership today using our affiliate link in the description below.
Right, let's start with the macro discussion first, lads, about general chip strategy and the weeks coming forward. I've got an image up here on the screen from the excellent article on Scout by Mark Jobling, where he talks about the upcoming fixtures, and he's laid this out in a very neat table with the teams who have which doubles, blanks, etc. And I think we should start from the bottom for 2 teams who have no doubles, a definite blank, and another possible blank. That's United and the Newcastle, who do have the fixture in 28. Where are you guys with these teams and these players?
Tom?
So I've got the triple on United at the moment, and I'm only holding Trippier from Newcastle. So the idea is to move a couple of those on ahead of game week 25. I haven't got any Brighton assets or any Brentford assets or anything like that. So I've got no problems with that. So I will most likely lose Shaw and Fernandes before the double, and then bench Trippier and Rashford like a lot of people, I think.
What about you, Ella?
Yeah, in the same boat, keeping the gunpowder dry for Liverpool assets. I think we've spoken enough about, we need to keep our minds open to Liverpool assets. But there are 2 teams that I really, really want to jump on. And one of them I'm looking to contemplate, and which is your team, which is Chelsea. So the dilemma that I have in my head this week is whether I should go for Felix or not. And we'll talk about that a little later, because they are one of the teams that don't blank in 25-28. And from now to 28, you're getting Southampton at home, you're getting Leeds at home, you're getting Leicester away and Everton at home. They're just a good run of fixtures. So that's the team that's really jumping at me. Leicester, I really want to dive into as well, but unfortunately, they look like they're going to be blanking in 28, and the fixtures right now don't look good, with United, Arsenal, Chelsea. But, you mentioned you're in the market for a midfielder, and you can't really think about anybody. Even though the fixtures look bad, Maddison seems like the midfielder to go for if you're maxed out on Arsenal at the moment.
Yep. Leicester have no doubles, but just one possible blank. And they're a form team.
Exactly. I mean, Tom, where do you stand in this entire debate where you're sort of handcuffed by the fixtures and the blanks and the doubles, and then there are obvious informed picks that you really want to go for, but we don't go for because there's a team that's playing 90 minutes more? What are your general thoughts on this?
It's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, I think I said on Twitter last week, in a way, this is my kind of least favourite part of the season, because although there's a lot of strategy now, the pool of players you can pick from feels much smaller than at the beginning of the season, where you've got free reign, everybody plays once, no blanks, straightforward. So Felix is a great example of that, isn't he? We're all looking at him this week. Doesn't blank, which is really good, but then he doesn't double either. So we're naturally looking at those players in game week 25, and we're looking at Liverpool and potentially prioritising them over others. And then it'll be the same with Brighton and Brentford. So it's very hard. But Maddison kind of proved last week, didn't he? He's that player that he was away at Spurs, wasn't he? And he did really well. And he's one of those players which I'd love to move for now. Quite difficult to do that.
Zoph, what's your debate? What's your thinking on just generally getting tunnel visioned into specific teams?
It always happens every year. We end up buying. I remember Phillips from West Brom. We held him for 4 or 5 weeks, and it's often that a player can outscore a guy even with one fixture over 2 fixtures and blank. So quality over quantity is something I always preach. But in the back of your mind, you always want to go for a guy who has a fixture. Ultimately, there's more potential for them getting points, and there are good teams who don't have any blanks, like no doubles, no blanks. Look at Villa, and we'll talk more about Villa. You have Chelsea, Forest, and Bournemouth. So I think Villa and Chelsea really stand out over here in terms of investment destinations. I think you can really look at them over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with this is I don't think you can have a thumb rule to this, and you need to look at every option very subjectively. Because I remember last season around this game week 25, 26, a lot of people wildcarded just before game week 25 or 26 and jumped very heavily on Wolves, and that didn't pay off. And a lot of people lost ground because of that. So, and then we can talk about Chris Wood being the captain in a double game week, or we can talk about the Dennis thing that happened. So you don't always have to, but Liverpool isn't a team comparable to Watford of last season or Burnley of last season. So it's a very subjective case. But if options do emerge that don't have doubles, like I think if you're going for a Chelsea player this week, I have no problems with it. Go ahead. There's no issue. It's one game less, but Felix is somebody who's likely going to play all the weeks, all the games. He's Chelsea are 1-0 down in the Champions League as well. So there is a good chance they might not have Chelsea Champions League games in the future as well, objectively, just looking at things. So if you want to go for it, go for it.
Harsh, but possibly true. But yeah, let's just touch upon Chelsea a little bit. In terms of midfield, there are no real options. And up top, it's only Felix you can go for. In defense, James is back and Chilwell also played yesterday. But rotation is a short-term concern. I would say not really a long-term concern with James, but he's not as attacking as before. You have to remember this is not a Tuchel system where the wing-backs are constantly attacking. He is getting forward, but it's not like the James of last year we could expect braces. So sort of expectations need to be tempered over there.
If you were going for one, would you go James or would you go somebody like Badiashile who isn't playing Champions League, but maybe a bit more secure, is he, for minutes?
I would still go James, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I was just reading the scout notes as well, and he was highest for touches in the final third amongst all Chelsea players, if I'm not mistaken, in the last league game. And even the game last night, the keeper had to pull off a spectacular save for James to not score. And I was just reading a few reports as well. They said that the more the games went on, the more Reece James got into the game. And he's Reece James, right? You're buying him for the quality as well. So it's been 3 games. Fitness is going up. I think he's a pick.
I agree. I wouldn't put anyone off James. I just want to direct attention to the teams now with one definite double and no blanks. Because obviously they should be the team we target, but we all probably maxed out on Arsenal. Everton, there's really any options in attack stand out to you guys? I sort of know the answer you're going to say, but somebody like McNeil or somebody?
Zoph, just before we dial ahead and go further in this conversation, any reason why Kai isn't an option?
Because I don't know. Kai is, he's I think second highest for chances created, but I do have a feeling that we're going to get Aubameyang in the lineup soon. Kai isn't able to put his chances away, and the team is struggling a little bit because of it.
When I'm watching Chelsea, though, you guys are creating enough. It's just you guys haven't. It's a little bit of a Leeds syndrome where you've been a little unlucky where you haven't finished your chances, but the creation is there. And I feel like the more this team plays together, the more it will work. Because I don't think Aubameyang can offer what Kai is offering, and I quite like how Kai and Felix sort of work in tandem because both play the 9.5, so to speak, because both players are 9 and both players are 10 and they're sort of interchanging role and it's linking up on both sides. I think that position is his, but Felix just seems to be involved in more and more chances. And
exactly. You go for Felix. You just don't go for Havertz. Exactly. You go for the better option because even if on paper it looks like Havertz is the number 9, you look at any average touch map and all that stuff, you see Felix is far beyond. Felix is the goal scorer, Havertz is the creator. So between the two, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, even worth mentioning, yesterday also, he hit the bar once and had a big chance as well. So getting those big chances at a staggering rate.
Small chance he could be on penalties. Who's on penalties now after Jorginho left? I'm not really sure.
Kai is. There were rumors that Kai was practicing penalties in training, is what I've heard, but I don't know much more after that.
Yeah, quite speculative.
He's definitely been a bit unfortunate with Havertz, hasn't he? He's had a couple of marginal goals ruled out for marginal offside calls, and he hit the post against Fulham, I think, as well, didn't he? Yeah, I think I agree with you too. I think it's Felix that looks the standout option in that attack if you want to go there.
I think that post chance you're mentioning against Fulham, I think that sums up the problem with Havertz. He should have really taken a shot a couple of seconds before. He made the angle a little bit worse for him and made the shot more difficult. It's just not the natural instinct of a goal scorer isn't there. And for whatever reason, some sort of voodoo magic, we just can't put the ball in the net right now.
Yeah. We've seen even Felix scored an offside goal last season as well, last week as well. His finishing does look really good. He's got that ice cold. He knows how to finish. Even the goal he scored last week. I think if Haaland looked dicey on the expected minutes this week, he would have been a legit captaincy option. But after what happened yesterday in the game against Arsenal, I don't know if I want to bet against Erling Haaland based on how he looked as well.
And I wouldn't let his Atletico record put you off because the Simeone system is completely different from what we are playing now. So those numbers, completely disregard them.
Right.
Let's dial back to Everton and Palace. Anybody interest you from either of these teams except in defense?
No.
I think Tarkowski 4.2, isn't he? I didn't think they were great against Liverpool. I know it's early days under Dyche, but it seemed to be more like the Everton of old that were playing in that game. I thought they were really careless with the ball. They didn't keep it well enough at all. I think that Calvert-Lewin is a really big miss for them. I think if they can keep him fit, they'll have a little bit more firepower, a little bit more attack. But without him, I don't see anything worth there. I looked at Iwobi, looked at McNeil and players like that, but I can't commit to them.
Same. And Palace are just playing so poorly. Even if Zaha was fit, I wouldn't be looking at him right now. The numbers are terrible at both ends of the pitch.
They haven't scored from open play in something like 9 games.
Exactly. It's terrible. So,
I despite the poor performance against Liverpool, I wouldn't be put off their defense though. Because the games which are there, which are clean sheet first, Dyche is going to Dyche. And I like having players from teams which are thinking clean sheet first. So still wouldn't put off anybody wanting to go for a taco.
Completely agree. Taco is probably the pick by far because he almost scored against Liverpool. He hit the post there, right? We're not mentioning that. They just countered from that.
Yeah. And, while we're talking about defense, I mean, if people are in the market for a keeper, I think Pickford is still right up there because you generally like having Sondage keepers because he tends to force the opponent to shoot from far, etc. as well. So there's a little bit of a higher volume of low XG chances happening, which is why more saves, etc. So I don't mind Pickford as a keeper pick as well if you're in the market for one right now.
Is that a dig at Edison owners, Ella?
No, it's not a dig at Edison. To be fair, I mean, I think we're on the same page where we don't really rate Edison as a pick and we like to go for higher upside potential and attack despite expected minutes. But I think they've had the steep end of the curve when it comes to bad luck and how poorly he's been performing since restart. So, I mean, a couple of clean sheets more would have probably been a little fairer, but it's just been bad luck for them.
Right. Should we move on and talk a little bit, just touch upon chip strategy a little bit?
Yes. And I want to talk about just one thing where, a lot of people were sitting outside the 1.5 million rank mark. And what I've seen, and especially in our Discord as well, lots of posts on Twitter where people were sitting outside the 2 million rank mark or 1.5 million, and they've jumped and reached about 300, 400K in a span of 3 or 4 weeks. So we've seen a lot of heavy rank shifts in a positive way for these players where you need 2 or 3 really good game weeks where you're hitting a game week rank of under 100K or under 200K. And it's because of how compact the points are, it's easy to slingshot. So, people who might be who might be on the verge of giving up their seasons, etc. There's that. Plus the number of blanks and doubles just tells me that there's immense opportunity to make ground. Like the one thing that surprised me this week was the amount of chips that have already been used in the top 10K. I was just looking at it. I mean, 13% of the top 10K have already used their wildcards. 30% have already used the free hit. 20% have already used the bench boost. I was very, very surprised to look at these numbers. They're way higher than I expected them to be. And that just tells me that there is gains to be made as long as you're paying attention to the next 15 game weeks.
Absolutely. I think Sam has gone from FPL family. She's gone from outside the 1 million to it's around 60K since the restart.
Yeah.
It's insane.
See, exactly. You need the up the green for 2 or 3 game weeks and you're right up there. So keeping that in mind, because I've seen people be a little lackluster with their chip strategy, and worth mentioning that our friends on Burning Questions over at the Scout did an excellent pod yesterday. You should check it out if you haven't already, where they laid out what you need to keep in mind in the future. But the main learning that I had is be aware of what's coming in front of you. And I think that period between game week 25 and 26, where we know how game week 28 is going to look and potentially how game week 29 might be, is important before you commit to a chip strategy. I think right now you can be open to it. Right now, I think would be rash to do something, hit the wild card or something of that sort. Just get a few Liverpool players if you want in 25 and then decide what you want to do with your chips in 26 onwards. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to commit right now, isn't it? I think we've got to be flexible, but that's why watching Burning Questions today and things like that, they're really good to just give you a rough idea of what you want to be looking at. I really like the wildcard 33, bench boost 34 route if I can get to it, just because I like the idea of playing a wildcard a week before a bench boost. Another strategy, I think, was one of the wildcard in 29, and there's like a 5 game week gap in between that and a bench boost, and I'm not quite as keen on that. So potential kind of free hit 29, wildcard 33 is what I'm loosely looking at. But yeah, you've got to be flexible, haven't you? Because all we're doing at the moment is we're predicting what's going to happen with game week 28, and all it would take is 1 or 2 surprises in the FA Cup, and that might be turned on its head. Are Liverpool going to feature in 28? Well, we don't know yet. We think probably not, because we think Fulham will be Leeds, but you don't know, do you? So it's hard to kind of set anything in stone. But at the moment, I'm kind of leaning towards that slightly later wild card, I suppose. There might be game weeks, blank game weeks, where I have to maybe not attack them as much as I want, and kind of have to sacrifice a blank game week here and there where I'm only going in with 9 or 10 players. But if it's part of a bigger plan, then I don't mind that so much.
Well summarized, guys.
I do want to mention, though, because there's a little bit of a poker analogy here in terms of the semi-bluff. And, a few people mentioned on the pod that's, I've been mentioning on Twitter that's why you don't overkill on Liverpool and don't go for 3 players from Liverpool, especially if they, blank in game week 28. And actually, you can semi-bluff your way to 28 as well, because you have chips in hand to get yourself out of the situation if it doesn't work. In the sense, what I'm trying to say here is that if you're going for 3 Liverpool in game week 25 and you're sitting with 3 blankers, if they don't play in 28, you're sitting with 3 blankers in 28. But if they do play in 28, you're sitting with 3 good assets in game week 28 as well. And the mindset you need to have, it's about putting yourself in a position to get lucky, right? If you had 3 Liverpool, you're maximizing 25. You're potentially maximizing 28. I mean, realistically speaking, there's a 50% chance Liverpool play in 28. That's how we probably look at it. So, where people are saying that, be a little cautious, etc., with how much you overcommit to Liverpool. But if you're overcommitting to Liverpool, it's fine, because there is a chance that it could work out for you and you don't need to use a chip in 28. And if you need to use a chip, I mean, what will happen? What's the worst that can happen? You have to wildcard earlier or use a free hit chip in 28. And I don't think that's a big deal. But if you overcommit, there's a chance to save the usage of a chip in 28. That's the point I want to make.
I agree with you in part, but I would say there's more than a 50% chance, because you would say Fulham are still big favorites for the game, right? So I would still say there's more chance of Liverpool blanking than not. You can play the odds, but to say there's a 50-50 chance, I think would be a bit unfair.
It's just my perception. I don't think Fulham are strong favorites. It's just how I see that game.
Fair enough.
I think they're evenly matched teams.
Fair enough. Cool. Let's talk about the game from last night, and let's start with Arsenal assets first. Let's just
Tom.
Go ahead. Now, what do you guys think about somebody who still owns Martinelli? Don't think he's going to start this weekend. I think Trossard deserves a start against Villa. Get off now?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would. I sold him last week for Saka. And again, we found that he was coming off early again. I think, and I think you're right. I think this game could be one that Trossard gets the nod in. It depends on your team. It depends what other fires you've got out. But if you can do it in a free transfer, then I'd happily sell Martinelli this week. And, I think Saka looks good this week. I think that when you're playing Villa, I think that the way we're set up, and we'll talk about it a bit later, our left side is much more attacking the left back. When it's Alex Moreno, he's pretty much playing like a winger. So I think Saka up against that side, even if it's Luka Dean in there, I think that's the winger that you want this. That seems like an obvious move, doesn't it? If you're going from Martinelli to get another Arsenal player in, and I'd put Saka a little bit ahead of Odegaard.
You agree, Ella?
Yeah, but Tom, what if you own Saka? Would you still make the Martinelli to Odegaard switch this week?
Well, I think Martinelli, I think I probably would sell him, whether it's Odegaard or it's another midfield. I mean, we will touch on this later, but there isn't tons of midfield options right now, is there? And so Odegaard is still a very good option. I know he didn't have a great double game week, but he's still going to be key to that side going forward. The next 6 fixtures for Arsenal in an attacking sense are absolutely brilliant. I think all of the teams that they play have been pretty poor at the back recently. So I think getting a double up on attack makes a lot of sense. And a lot of us are already on that anyway, aren't we? So keep the faith a bit longer. And I'm going to keep Nketiah a few more weeks, and then potentially move him on to Tony in 27. But we'll see how it goes there over the next few weeks.
What do you think of Arsenal's
on
clean sheets?
Nketiah.
Sorry, I'm going to go to White first and ask about Arsenal's clean sheets prospects against Villa.
We've scored in every match under Emery so far. I don't worry about us in an attack. We've got a pretty settled lineup at the moment with Watkins and Bailey up front, and then Buendia and Ramsey out wide. McGinn might come back into one of those roles, but yeah, I see us scoring. This weekend. I don't think Arsenal will shut us out, but I still see them winning the match. But I do think we'll offer a threat. But I think White comes back in, doesn't he? I mean, Tomiyasu didn't have a great game last night, did he? So I don't think that's a problem if you own White.
Ella, you're saying on Nketiah?
Yeah, we just had a little bit of good news today where, Arteta did mention that Gabriel Jesus hasn't even trained with the first team yet, and he's still a few weeks away. So I just wanted to mention that owners are looking good for game week 25 in terms of expected minutes, at least.
Right. Should we talk about City a bit?
Yes, why not?
Right. So I'm just going to bring up the schedule now. I've got Lego Mane's image over here. I'm just going to draw over your windows and zoom in a little bit so the stream can see what I'm talking about. Now, City right now in the midst of what I call a 6-day, 3-game week. So they played on Sunday and they played on Saturday. So you can see the turnarounds here between Villa, Arsenal and Forest are quite short. Only 2-day turnarounds. And Guardiola specifically mentioned that all these games are away. So what that effectively means is the team travels back on Thursday and they travel again on Friday. So this is pretty much the big hotspot in terms of rotation risks. But the saving grace somewhat is that the Leipzig game is not on Tuesday. It's on a Wednesday. But then right after that, you have Bournemouth. That's again 2 days later. So what do you guys think about City assets and the rotation risk?
That Bournemouth game, I think, is it the 5:30 on the Saturday as well? It's the late kickoff, isn't it?
Might be.
Which isn't massive, but it helps a little bit. I think the key is that Bristol City game, isn't it? We spoke about it off air, didn't we? And you hope that the big guns would be afforded a rest in that. Pep tends to go quite strong in those games, but you've got to think with the league title back on and the schedule as it is, going to rest Haaland, it's surely got to be in that one.
I'd agree. I think let's bring in the captaincy discussion now. Since we're talking about Haaland, do you think he starts this weekend? Tom?
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah. I think he looked good last night. He was carrying that niggle, wasn't he? But I thought he was really aggressive. Some of those duels with Gabriel and Saliba were just absolutely epic to watch. Absolutely love that. And I think he looks in a good moment. And yeah, I feel really comfortable captaining him this week. Did have thoughts before last night. If he misses out, if he gets managed minutes, then to have a backup plan. But no, I'm pretty comfortable picking the armband on him after watching him last night.
Ella?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same way. Also, what jumped out to me is I want to know what the fitness looks like for the Forest centre backs, because what happened in the previous game is their first choice centre backs limped off in the 7th minute, and I thought Fulham looked really good in that game. They sort of dominated the game, had a fair amount of chances. Because I was looking at the underlying numbers, and Forest's defensive underlying numbers since restart have been pretty good, but based on evidence of what I saw against Fulham, where I thought Fulham could have scored 3 or 4 against them, I am not going to be backing anybody except Erling Haaland for captaincy this week. Unless Guardiola says something tomorrow to put us off Haaland, I think he's going to be my captain this week.
I'd agree. Forest are no pushovers, and City need to build on this momentum. And I think they pretty much got some sort of fire under their ass from this entire news that has come out with their whole sanctions. You could see that the team has been fired up over the last few games. So they're going to build on that, I think. And I think going against Haaland could work. But then again, who do you go against? Probably Rashford or Felix. And Rashford, you guys are away at the Camp Nou today. And although you do expect him to start, it's a tough game at the Camp Nou. It's a very draining game. So I don't feel that confident in Rashford's prospects this week. Where you guys
Yeah,
are
likewise.
similar.
Yeah, similar thoughts. I mean, if you really fancy it, Leicester defense is still not the best defense you can go for. They have improved, and confidence does things to teams, but I just can't look past Haaland at the moment. I think that team is going to be very, very fired up, and it's a very high risk, because you can easily see a 60-minute Haaland hat-trick sub-off, similar to what happened against Wolves, and his ceiling is his ceiling, and that's what you have to respect.
Yeah, I was very close to not captaining him earlier in the season in the similar fixture. The way we were worried because of those Guardiola quotes, and I just don't want that to happen again. Sorry, Tom, you're saying something?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of just say about De Bruyne. Do you think he gets another start this weekend?
Yeah, I think that's a big topic this week, moving De Bruyne to Salah possibly a week early. And Newcastle's numbers at home are so elite that I would still back De Bruyne. And De Bruyne, you could see it, like when he was coming off the pitch, he was getting pelted with those beer mugs and all that stuff. He's fired up as well. You could see that there's something in him that's come back, and it's a bit risky to get rid of De Bruyne this week. I think it's such a better fixture. You play the upside rather than Salah away to Newcastle this week. Do you agree,
Yeah,
Ella?
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
also
go.
the thing with De Bruyne, right? It just wasn't the performance against Arsenal. I thought he looked really good against Villa as well. He's not been in the best vein of form since restart, but I thought he stood out to me against Villa. I thought he had a really good game. Despite having no shots, I thought he was playing really well, and he carried that forward in the Arsenal game. So, yeah, at the moment, I don't see myself making that switch from De Bruyne to Salah this week. Because what might happen is, next week you're maybe thinking of other routes to get Mo Salah. De Bruyne has another good week, and he's continuing the streak of form. So I don't want to commit to selling De Bruyne just yet.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning City have Bournemouth also next week, so the fixtures are good.
Yeah, and like Tom mentioned, right, the key is that the game after Bournemouth is the FA Cup game against Bristol City. So you'd hope that that's where some of the big dogs get rested.
Should we talk about the defense?
Well, what about also Mahrez?
Yeah,
Do you,
let's talk about
people
Mahrez.
like you are in the market for a midfielder? Would you consider a Mahrez now, or do you think the boat's been missed? Where are your thoughts there?
I do feel that the boat has been missed a little bit. It does feel a little bit chasey, but at the same time, Luke did a thread on this about how Bernardo is playing at left back. It's one less guy to compete with Mahrez for the right wing spot. But now that the Champions League is resuming, we know Mahrez is a European specialist. I feel slightly put off there.
Yeah.
Tom, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Mahrez, Grealish, Haaland kind of attack is really starting to click, isn't it? I think they really complement each other well, and I think that feels clearly like the first choice now. Foden's going to have to do quite a lot to get back in. The only thing that would worry me is that Bernardo's been playing this kind of hybrid role, hasn't he? But then it didn't work last night. I think Pep came up after the match and said that said as much, didn't he? And then Bernardo shifted into that right wing spot, didn't he? When Mahrez came off. So it's that Champions League. Mahrez has missed the Champions League for them. He's going to be playing all of those games. He might be getting a rest in for the next 2 years. It's really hard to predict. I wouldn't move for him now, personally.
Just on the Bernardo thing, because I think that has a connection to something I want to talk about now in terms of what Ake owners or what Akanji owners or what Lewis owners should do right now, is I do think that Arsenal is a different kind of a game where you're up against Bukayo Saka if you're playing in that position compared to the games that they're going to have in the future when we're talking about, the likes of Forest or Bournemouth or Crystal Palace, where it's going to be more about City's control, and he wanted more control. What was hurting them was a transition. And I do think that these games are actually more suited to Bernardo playing in that inverted position, where City will have more control of the ball and the opposition isn't as strong as an Arsenal team. So there is that slight nuance where you think that they might not need a certified defender in that position. But I just wanted to add, what do you do now? If you're an Ake owner, if you're an Akanji owner, do you stick with the bed you made or do you shift? Where do you go?
I think it depends on the rest of your squad, really. I think I do like moving them on to possibly an Everton defender, free up some cash for upgrades elsewhere. That's probably where I would look.
Tom?
Yeah, I think I'd probably hold for now and see what Pep does, but I don't think he'll use Bernardo in that role this weekend because I see Brennan Johnson in that channel, and he's looked really lively. He's got a lot of pace, hasn't he, down that? Caused United a few problems when he played against them. I recall recently. So maybe this is a game when he says, "Look, I'm going to put Ake at left back to cope with that threat, and then bring Laporte maybe in, like Diaz, and then Walker at right back." So Ake might be good. I don't know where Akanji fits in all of this, and I don't know where Lewis does either. But I would probably say see what Luke says, see what Alex says as well, who are really good with these predictions, see what their kind of thoughts are with it. But for me, if you own Lewis, he feels like a bit of a problem now.
Yeah. I mean, there are two teams that you're going to target in the future that have a good game this week. I mean, Chelsea have Southampton at home. So, if you're looking at somebody like a Badiashile or a Reece James, now might be a good time to move. And same with Everton. They have Leeds United at home. Now, it isn't an ideal fixture. Leeds have got goals in them. I probably wouldn't move for Leeds, but if you're looking for a Reece James or Badiashile, now might be a good time to switch. And if you're waiting for a week as well, there is the option to upgrade to a Trent or a Robertson, and Tom's going to talk about Trent a little later. But that is also something that could be on your mind.
That's a good point. Probably Chelsea. We have defenders with upside, right? The problem with the City defenders, you're getting the rotation risk without the upside. That's no fun.
Yeah. And Forest aren't prolific, but no team has stopped them from scoring at the 6 round since Gameweek 4. I think it was Spurs. So they tend to score in home matches as well. A good crowd behind. So it wouldn't surprise me, even if Ake gets his start, if City lose that seat this weekend. I still see them winning 3-1 or something like that, but well conceded.
Right. So should we move on now to the Liverpool discussion and talk about the doublers in 25 and 27?
Sure. Sounds good.
I'm bringing up the image here. Now, this is the average position map from the last Liverpool versus Everton game. And Trent's back playing much further forward. He's not playing that RCB quarterback deep lying role that he was at one point earlier in the season. And his heat map shows that as well. In terms of chances created, he's top amongst all Liverpool players, top amongst defenders. What are your guys thinking? I know I said a few pods ago that I wouldn't be looking at Trent even if he had a triple, but I'm willing to reconsider that. I definitely got off my high horse, and I think you can't really be stubborn in FPL. If the opportunity arises, you look at it. What are your guys' thoughts about investing in Trent? Tom, you first.
Yeah, I think covered the match for Scout, the Merseyside derby, and it looked like when the teams came out, it looked like that kind of traditional 4-3-3, didn't it? With Gakpo playing the Firmino role through the middle and dropping and allowing Salah and Darwin to attack the inside. But it was quite fluid, and what I kind of took note from was that Bajcetic kind of went into that 6 role alongside Fabinho, and Henderson was really pushed far forward. He was kind of next to Gakpo a lot, and it was more like a kind of 4-2-4 really, I think. But what I did take from it is that it's really good for Salah and Darwin because they're getting the two best, their most dangerous attackers into really good roles in that team. And I think it helps the fullbacks too, because I think if you've got a double pivot in there, it just gives them that little bit more protection to get forward. Alexander was going wide. He was coming inside a little bit as well. And I'd previously thought that Alexander isn't going to be worth the money unless Liverpool can start keeping clean sheets. And it might be too soon to say they are going to do that now. They've been so leaky. That gave me a little bit more confidence. And I'm really interested to watch them against Newcastle. I think they'll use the same system and just see how it kind of works defensively. And, you know, the fixtures in game week 25, they're good for clean sheets, aren't they? They've got Palace, they've got Wolves. Certainly, I'm kind of on my radar. And short to Alexander-Arnold could be something I look at in 25.
I mean, exactly the same boat as you. But LR, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. My mind's open to me, and you know the way my team is structured at the moment. I think the choice for me is going to be between Darwin and Reece as a combination, or Felix and Trent as a combination. So that's the duo of players that I'm going to look at. So the thinking is, if I'm moving on a Chelsea player, and especially if it's Felix, I think the right week to jump on Felix is this week. But I'm happy to delay the decision, see what happens. But it feels like an opportunity missed if I'm not jumping on Felix this week, because it seems like a brace potential kind of game where the upside is there. So I need to make up my mind. I need to think about this further. And yeah, I mean, Trent is someone who is on my radar as well. And, you know, he looks good. And the fixtures are, like Tom mentioned, it also helps that when you're seeing Virgil van Dijk on the bench ready to come on as well. So that, because I think Gomez to Van Dijk also is a huge upgrade in terms of personnel playing at the back for Liverpool. So yeah, you don't mind going there. I don't mind going there because the upside is there, like Tom mentioned.
I agree. And I want to talk about Jota, Gakpo and stuff, but again, I'm going to go back now to Liverpool's schedule over the next few weeks, because again, they also have the Champions League game coming. But the schedule isn't as bad. Now, they have a decent turnaround to Newcastle. Now, the Madrid turnaround is actually quite short. It's Saturday to Tuesday. Then they have a decent turnaround to Palace, decent turnaround to Wolves, and then they have Man United. So Palace is on the Saturday, Wolves is on the Wednesday, Man United is on the Sunday. It's 3 games over 8 days, which is the ideal split in terms of avoiding rotation. Now, do you think Nunes or Jota are going to get consistent minutes? Gakpo with Firmino back feels a bit of a minefield everywhere else other than Salah.
Yeah, I think Salah's fine, but I want my minimum expectation from Darwin is he's the one I'm looking at, would be a start and probably 20-30 minutes another game. So I think he's good for 120 minutes with the upside of 150 potential minutes, because he's had a good run of games. You know, he's looking sharp at the moment. Fitness is not a concern. So how many minutes does Jota, Firmino play after that? I don't quite know. I think Firmino is competing on paper with Gakpo for that slightly tennis role, but the threat to Darwin, I think, is Jota in two kind of ways. If Jota is playing as the center forward in a 4-3-3 with Jota, with Darwin on the left and Salah on the right, I don't think Jota is going to be the kind of guy who's sort of dropping in deep to link up play. He's more the spearhead, the tip of the attack. So the triangle sort of becomes inverted on the other side. And he's also somebody who's going to be competing with Darwin for that split forward role on the other side as well. So that's where slight hesitancy on Darwin. That's why. But I do think that outside of Salah, his upside is the highest, just because of the frequency in which he gets the chances. And if you're happen to own him on the day that he converts the 3 chances he gets instead of missing them, you're winning the lottery.
Yeah, because they also have, after United, Bournemouth in 27 before the possible blank, and the United game is at Anfield, where they are a better team, obviously. So there is upside there even for the next 2 fixtures, I think, after the double.
Exactly. The problem is the expected minutes, and want to know how much of a threat Firmino and Jota are going to be to Darwin. What do you think, Tom, in terms of Darwin's expected minutes?
I think they're good because he's really fit, isn't he? I think Jota and Firmino are coming back from spells on the sidelines. I think they'll be in. I think Jota is the threat to his minutes, not so much Firmino. But Klopp really wants Darwin to get that goal. He spoke about it after the match. He said, look, Salah's got his goal, his first one since Boxing Day. Gakpo got his goal. He said, we really need Darwin to get next. And I think he's going to keep him in the team. But in that double, given that there's Champions League and everything going on, yeah, I think your minute prediction was, I think that's what we should expect. And then anything on top of that is a bonus, really. But he would be the player absolutely behind Salah that if you double on the attack, that's where to go, I think. I'd put him quite a bit ahead of someone like Gakpo.
I completely agree.
What about Robbo? Just while we're having this discussion, Tom, when you notice the game, how forward is Robbo getting, or is Trent the far superior option at the moment?
He's far superior. I don't mind Robertson, but I've always had a preference for Trent when there was a kind of a period, I think it was last year, wasn't it, with Robertson was in a really hot moment, and you could see that he was attacking the inside quite a bit. But from what I've seen so far, I think this system and having somebody like Bashetic who's going to drop in a little bit will allow Alexander-Arnold to flourish a bit. I think that, he's where I'm looking over Robertson at the moment.
The numbers have jumped. I think there has been a tactical shift over the last few weeks to get Trent further forward.
Good.
Right. Anything more on Liverpool? Should we move on to the 27 doublers?
As of today, you're going to captain Salah or an Arsenal player in 25? Just
I
getting
think
the
right now
Salah.
I'm on Saka.
Okay, I'm Salah.
I'm on Salah too at the moment as things stand.
Yeah, you know me. I'm talking a big game now, but when it comes to it,
Let's see.
Right. Brentford and Brighton. I think
Right.
these are the two teams we want
Yeah.
to get into discussion with. Yeah.
And I want to mention first, before I forget, Tony is currently on 8 yellow cards. So he's obviously not going to play in 25. And then in 26, we again enter similar territory than like we were with Mitrovic. He picks up a yellow card this game week or in 26. And we know he might have a possible blank again in 28. Things get very tricky. Something we should keep in mind. But Brighton, again, the question, they're a form team. And you could argue that with a double confirm, they possibly make up for the for the blank this week. But at the same time, very tricky team to invest in with the way the schedule is laid out. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, they've been one of the most potent attacks in the league, haven't they? But I think if I opt for that chip strategy, which I discussed earlier, which was that wildcard 33, and I've got that in the back of my mind, I've got to be careful not to go too far in on Brighton, I think. So I'd probably be looking at one attacker. But that's the big question, isn't it? Because you've got Matoma, you've got Marsh, and now you've got McAllister as well, who's come back onto the radar, playing a bit further forward. I think he had 7 shots at the weekend. So, yeah, picking one of those is probably where I'm at. And they've still got quite a few games to reschedule as well, haven't they, Brighton? So we might find another double or two popping up as well after that blank, because it's almost certain, isn't it, that they are going to blank into. Yeah, maybe just one midfielder for me.
They've got, I think, a guaranteed double in 29 as well as a likely double between 30 and 32 as well. So I think between the space of 28 and 32, you could be seeing at least 2, maybe 3 doubles for Brighton. So that's the lay of the land.
Yeah, post international break, definitely a team we need to dive in on.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth mentioning because the McAllister role is quite important here. And I think it has to do with Lallana not playing in that Brighton team as well, which is why McAllister is going slightly further forward because Lallana plays that further forward role otherwise. And it's just something we need to monitor and jump on the right Brighton player after 25. But, something I put in the Discord, Zoph, after watching the highlights as well as some of the game was that I just told the guys to remind me that Mitoma and Estupinian are obvious and to not get creative with my Brighton players. But McAllister has put his hand up and it's worth giving him a chance and looking at him further. But I do want to talk about Estupinian because I think in the last 2 games, while Mitoma has been drifting slightly wide, Estupinian has been making a lot of runs in the inside channel and he's getting a lot closer to goal, and in my head, his goal threat has gone up quite substantially. So he's looking like a very explosive pick. I think a lot of people who already own Estu have a little bit of a benching debate this week because they own Trippier, Shaw, an Arsenal defender, and Estupinian. Tom, who would you bench out of these?
I would play Estupinian this week, I think. I mean, Fulham have got pretty good attack, haven't they? But Mitrovic isn't firing at the moment. A little bit off the pace. So I'd try and find a way of getting Estupinian. But I do actually think Arsenal and Man United week, actually. Villa scoring, and I think that Leicester, when we'll talk about them later, but with the firepower they've currently got, Casemiro isn't back yet, is he? So he's out again. So I would say I would fancy both Villa and Leicester to score.
Let's talk about Leicester now.
Just
I think let's touch upon Iheanacho and Maddison. Iheanacho has been in insane form. I think 27 points or something for the last couple of weeks. And you must have watched him, Tom. When they played Villa, what were your thoughts on Leicester in general? What's brought around this turnaround in the attacking form?
Yeah, well, I was on the third row at Villa Park for that game, and yeah, it wasn't pretty. But it was. I was sat there, and then they were reading out the lineups, and I was in the stadium already, and you know, it was like Tete. It was his first match. He came straight into the team, and I think that has such an impact on, because he can play that right wing kind of inside forward role. Haven't really had anybody for a long time to play, and it frees up Maddison to play in the middle. Harvey Barnes, absolutely love Barnes as a player, and Iheanacho now. I mean, it's a mystery why he doesn't play more minutes for that team, because it all just clicked. As soon as the lineups came out, I turned to my son and said, "We're going to concede a couple here," and it was even worse than that. And it was, they kind of blew us away. I mean, a lot of it we did bring on ourselves. There was a lot of mistakes, but it's just that front four. I mean, that is real quality. It has an impact on Castagne. Tete, he's not getting forward as much, but for the front players, I think there's some really nice picks in. Maddison, then probably Barnes, but then if Iheanacho's playing as well, he's great. I can't wait to get on Leicester, basically, but now I can't do it right now anyway. We're probably looking at game week 20, 29, I think. But so much potential, such good prices.
It's funny how he still wants to sub off Iheanacho in the 70th, 75th, 77th minute. It absolutely does my head. I mean, he's your best player very clearly on the pitch. Everything's worked out. You know, he's finally playing the right players in the right position. But the best thing about Iheanacho also is his price, 6.1 million. That's just going to enable so much. I mean, the guys at FML FPL were reading out his run when we all had him a couple of seasons ago in the last 8-9 game weeks. It was like, 12, 13 returns in 10 games. That's the kind of player he is, and that's what he's capable of. And just waiting to jump on Leicester, like how Thomas mentioned.
Yeah, I wouldn't put anyone off going for their players though.
No, I wouldn't either. Yeah, I wouldn't. Despite the fixtures.
Yeah, and I don't think people will look at Harvey Barnes either. I think people are going to be drawn to Maddison and Iheanacho, but I look at Barnes in that team. You've got Dewsbury Hall and you've got Maddison, who are both central now. They're naturally creating chances. You've got Iheanacho, who drops quite deep, doesn't he, when he plays in that? And so I think Barnes is going to hoover up a lot of those chances. Whether or not he can convert them, I don't know, but he's going to get chances, I think. And I think he's, even bearing in mind how bad Leicester have been, third for big chances among midfielders across the season. Gets in, he shoots on sight a lot of the time, takes up great positions. So he's the kind of one I'm looking at, maybe to complement one of the others, maybe a double up.
Yeah. Zoph's in the market. I think both of you are a guy in the market for a midfielder. When it comes to credit based on what you've been watching, Leicester are up there, especially in the under 9 million bracket.
Yep. But yeah, I would definitely go for Maddison over Barnes personally.
Well, he's got a lot of he's in a crazy run of form, isn't he? Numbers over the past year have been incredible. Building his fitness back up now. So, yeah, I can't argue with it.
Anything more on Leicester, guys?
Just dialing back the conversation to Brighton and Brentford a little bit, because I think what's important, I think we can just add a little bit of chip strategy, and I want your guys' thoughts, is I think people who are already owning Mitoma plus Estupiñán or maybe Ivan Toney, for example, and these are the guys they're going to be benching in Game Week 25. I think there is something worth mentioning in terms of an opportunity to bench boost in Game Week 27 and get it out of the way before you wildcard, because Pras pointed this out. There's going to be a benching dilemma for a lot of players. United play Southampton at home. Leicester play Chelsea. Liverpool play Bournemouth. So you're not going to bench those players. Fulham play Arsenal. So Arsenal have a decent fixture as well. Brighton have the double. Brentford have the double as well. Harry Kane and Spurs play Forest at home as well. So and I think Newcastle has a good game too, if I'm not mistaken. Newcastle play Wolves at home. So for those people that already have, and let's face it, most of us own players from these teams, there's good fixtures for everybody. So think about whether you want to potentially bench boost here. But it is worth mentioning that we're going to see a very big double in Game Week 29, where a lot of the teams that are highly owned are going to have really good double Game Week fixtures as well. So just something I wanted to look at when you're looking at a team in Gameweek 27. That's all.
But 29 BB I do not like because it's right after the international break. Minutes, injury news and all a bit dodgy. So I like them to invest in at the 29, but BB that week is very tricky.
Yeah. 34 looks like the most common. It could be one of the most common weeks to bench boost.
Right. Just dialing it
Yeah.
back to another side from the Midland Storm before we talk about Villa Wolves. They play Bournemouth this week and they have a double, and I think they will have the fixture in 28 personally. If Fulham wins, then Wolves get the fixture in 29. It's a good one. I think that Leeds at home that week. Is there any option in that attack even worth considering?
I know you mentioned Sarabia, didn't you, before? And yeah, I haven't watched as much as Wolves I would have liked recently, and I haven't seen as much as him. I read a couple of reports earlier, said he made a couple of quite nice touches, but he's still acclimatised into that system. I think Lopetegui's a really good manager. I think he could become. I'm not writing him off. Defensively, that's the obvious place to look, isn't it? You've got Kilman there, who's playing. He's 4.3. I think for Wolves though, I think you're going to move. You want to move this week for a defender because they've got Bournemouth. Because the double fixtures, you're going to play them, but they're not great fixtures. Got a couple of tough ones after that. So I think a bit like Chelsea. I think if you want to make the Wolves move, do it.
Agree. The entry point is better this week.
But I wouldn't hurry.
I wouldn't hurry. It not necessarily doesn't feel like really a team you want to invest in still. But I think for Bueno owners, the prospects of him getting back into the team are pretty good. From what I've read on the forums and the general comments, people were very happy with his performance after. And I think he will start at least one game in 25, possibly both.
Yep.
I don't think you sell him. I think you just hope he gets back in now. And I think if you own him in the play-in day, so even if he just gets the one start, I don't see a clean sheet either of those games against Fulham and Liverpool anyway. So if he comes out with 2 points, probably okay.
Right. Now before
and his attacking threat is quite underrated also. I mean, he almost had an assist as well in that game, so you could get lucky. Don't sell.
Right. Now before we move on to our teams, let's spend some time on Villa, Tom. And for those of you guys who don't know, Tom is a very pessimistic Villa fan, sort of how I am about Chelsea. So I want to know where you are on Villa, Tom. Defense, attack, midfield, and general the whole vibe under Emery.
Yeah, well, I think he's been really impressed with Emery so far. I've got a lot of faith in him that long term it's going to work. He has his kind of approach, and he doesn't move away from it. He's demanding that we're playing out from the back, and it causes a lot of nervy moments. I don't think the players are quite completely comfortable with it yet, which is how a lot of Leicester's goals came about. When you come up against a high-pressing team who are going to commit bodies up high up the pitch, it can be a bit nervy. Leeds had a lot of joy, played very well against us a few weeks back. But generally, we're moving in the right direction. I think under Emery we'll do very well. Post the FPL takeaways, which is what everybody wants to know. We play like a 4-4-2. The left back is a lot more attacking than Young on the right. He tends to keep balance a bit more. Alex Moreno was a player a couple of weeks ago I thought was going to nail down that role. Now Luca Dean's come in, and I don't quite know why. I don't know. Against Leicester, was it experience? Was it for his crossing ability? Because he's a better crosser of the ball, but he was hooked on 45 minutes anyway. Moreno came on. Crazy positioning, so advanced. Dean was preferred again at Man City, which I can understand. It's a tough fixture, isn't it? But I think if you've got Moreno and you've been a bit disappointed, I do think he comes back in. Maybe not against Arsenal, but I think against the teams where we're going to have a bit more of the ball, playing the opponent's half a bit more, I think he'll play. So it's a tricky one. I can't really recommend Moreno as a pick. It's probably Mings at 4.3 if you want a defender, but I think if they're both on the pitch at the same time, Moreno's got loads more upside than Mings. So that's maybe a wait and see. You're not going to move this week anyway, are you? So see what happens with that. Any interest in Villa defenders for you two? Probably not, I guess.
Mings was on my radar, definitely, but with the whole injury risk, I'm a little bit put off. But I do like the fixture in 28 in particular. I think they play Bournemouth at home, but most teams will blank. And even against Everton in 25, it could be sort of a 0-0. That's a game that feels that way. But I think it would just be Mings. I'm going nowhere near Dean. That's one guy. I usually give players a fresh slate, but Dean doesn't get that for me. What about in up top? Watkins has been slowly ticking along.
Yeah, he's only 1 point behind Mitrovic this season. Couldn't get my head around, to be honest, when I saw that. But when he came in, feels like an MRA striker. Feels like a good fit. He works the channels. He holds the ball up well. Formed this kind of partnership with Bailey. Now, Soldings, January. We only bought in John Duran, who's young. He's raw. He won't start for us for a while. So Bailey and Watkins, they're both nailed in that team.
I'm disappointed you said that, Tom, because I was going to ask you about John Duran. Every time he's come on, he looks so exciting. I was like, when is he going to start? Because he's the player I have an eye on.
Yeah, well, when he's come on, he's made a real impact. He hit the bar against City, didn't he? And then against Leicester, he was causing problems. He's strong, he's quick. But everything that Emery has said after the match, he's been a compliment followed by he's young, he's going to take time. So I don't see him being thrown in ahead of Bailey just yet. Watkins is pretty nailed. Watkins has done really well. I think he's got 4 goals, 3 assists in 8 matches under Emery. One of those matches he came off against Leeds. So I like Watkins a lot, but it's very hard for me to recommend him because there's a lot of forwards around now, isn't there? So, you've obviously got your Haaland, it's 2 spots, and then you've got your Darwins, you've got Etias, you've got Tony, you've got Felix. It's very hard for Watkins. I don't hate it. But he might even be on penalties. I don't know. I don't think he will. Might be. So I'd probably say Bailey because he's down to 4.4 now. I think he is going to start most games. So if you need that 5th midfield enabler, I don't think there's any better than him, right? I'd put him level with Andreas, to be honest. So that's probably where I'd look if you do want to invest in that.
Yeah, well summarized. I'm quite optimistic about Villa. Nice to hear from you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I never felt that confident under Gerrard. We would string 2 good performances together and then back to square one. But I just like watching Emery. He can see things tactically and he responds to it quite early in the game. Half-time subs, 60-minute subs, whereas he doesn't hang around, basically. Make that switch and you see why he's done it, and often it works. And Coutinho came on as well against Man City, and I thought it was his best performance in a long time. So Buendia is playing well, but they're probably competing with each other for minutes. So that's a kind of let's see what happens. I'd love Coutinho to be given that start of the week against Arsenal. I don't think he will.
What do you think about attackers that you own facing Villa? How do you feel about that? Let's say you own a Saka. If you're considering him for captaincy against an Aston Villa, how do you perceive something like that?
I don't think I'd captain say this week, but I don't mind it because we are still, Kamara and Douglas Luiz on their day they're very good, but Kamara was caught in possession a couple of times with this playing out from the back foot approach recently, and I do think Mings wasn't fit at Man City, and Chambers came in and he's really off the pace. It doesn't fill you with confidence. I think Mings will be back. I think it's fine to attack Villa with a forward or a midfielder. And if it's a home match, maybe a captain, but not going to Villa Park. No, I don't see Arsenal going and scoring 3 or 4 goals or anything like Leicester.
I think we're actually more attacking and open at Villa Park, Tom. I think he sets up a bit more defensively away. I think the games at Villa Park, I always expect to be a bit more high scoring.
Yeah, well, he's got the crowd on his back there, hasn't he? And they're any kind of too much sideways passing, and Villa Park kind of erupts, and one of them to get on the front foot again. So I get that, and so yeah, Saka might have some space this weekend down that. Even if Dean plays, it will be more attacking that side. So I could see Saka getting something. If I remember rightly, I think he scored at Villa Park last year as well. So yeah, he's going to be a good attacker too. Anything
more to add here, guys? Should we move on?
Yeah, just before we move.
Go ahead.
Before we move on to our teams, there's 80% Harry Kane owners in the house now. If you own him, is he a captaincy option against West Ham at home? West Ham have improved defensively. I'd still go Haaland over Kane at the moment, especially with Bentancur.
I like him as an option in general, possibly over Rashford. He would be number 2, I would say, below after Haaland.
Big problem for me, though, is the injury in midfield. I think Bentancur is one of their most important players, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he's out for the season is what it looks like. So, and Bissouma isn't fit either as well. So it's a straight downgrade to Winks, if I'm not mistaken. So unless he switches to playing 4 attackers, because Richarlison and Danjuma are sitting on the bench every game. So that's my problem with Harry Kane, because I think he's going to be a big loss. And in general, what do you think? You still hold on to Harry Kane as an asset? He does love the London derbies, and that's a separate sort of game for him. But what are your thoughts there, Tom?
Yeah, well, they played Skip and Sarr against Milan, didn't they? And I think from what I read, like they did all right. But I do worry a bit about Spurs and how much they create. But I'm not going to say don't go for Kane, because he has a habit of popping up and scoring, doesn't he? West Ham have looked better recently. But yeah, Kane's a definite hold for me. I think he's always a player I worry about when I haven't got it. That Fulham match summed it up a few weeks ago, didn't it? I mean, they didn't have a sniff. Fulham were all over them, and he pops up with that bit of magic. That's enough. So yeah, definite hold. I'm sure I'll own him at some point now.
Would you sell him next week for a pool forward, or to facilitate Salah?
Have a look at what. Probably not looking at what's to come. They've got some pretty good. They've got Wolves, Forest, and Wolves and Forest after, haven't they? So I don't know. Might be tempted to keep Kane if I've held him for this long.
Yeah, because now people that own De Bruyne and Kane, if they want to go to Salah, there's a decision between which one to sell now. So that's something people have to think about. Which way are you leaning, Zoph, if you had to get rid of one for Salah?
I'd probably get rid of De Bruyne still. Because right now, when we're entering Champions League period, 90 minutes every game with Kane, it counts for a lot.
All right. Cool. Let's move to our teams.
Right. Before that, just some quick lineups from Fantasypaedia for some big matches this weekend. First up, we have Nottingham Forest, who concede a lot of chances down the center. So again, strengthens the case we were talking about Haaland earlier.
Yes, love that.
And like you said, Tom, I think you'd mentioned that Villa's left side is more vulnerable. Was that right?
Yeah, that backed up in the numbers.
Exactly, that is backed up in the numbers in terms of chances conceded over there. So Saka again makes a case better for moving Martinelli on for Saka this week. And I think you get Saka in now, pretty much set up for the next few weeks. Now, Manchester United against Leicester. Leicester are weak down their right. So again, good for your Luke Shaw and Rashford. Okay, who plays right back for Leicester now? Castagna, right? Castagna still fit.
Yeah, I think so. Just going back on, they had their new left back. They've just started to play Christensen as well, who was on all corners when just slightly off topic, but if Leicester can type, worth looking at. But yeah, it's Castagna on the right now. Tete's come in front of him, so they might be adjusting to set up. And so yeah, I'm probably going to start Shaw this weekend.
Just one more. Let's have a look at Newcastle United versus Liverpool. It's pretty even split of chances. I don't think there's really anything to pick up out there, but the defensive numbers at home are absolutely elite. I think it's the last 6 home games, the XGC was something like 3.5. So it's like half a XG conceded at every home game. Absolutely elite numbers.
I just want to say, though, in the last 3-4, they look more vulnerable than they have previously.
That's Bruno.
Bruno. Yeah. Just they don't look like the same team that filled me with a ton of confidence as they have previously. I just wanted to mention that.
I'd agree with that, and it makes me think they might be even setting up more defensive this weekend. Maybe not something consciously that they're doing. Just without Bruno Guimaraes, I think they lack that bit of creativity. Don't they? I mean, he's such a good player; it would affect any team. But I don't know. Quite a hard match to read, but if I had to pick, I'd say that's going to be quite a tight, kind of close, low-scoring game. I think if I had to.
Yeah, it feels like a 1-0, 1-1 kind of game. Right. Let's move on to our teams, and before we discuss, I think all of us are looking to save a transfer.
No, I'm not sure.
Not sure. Interesting. So we'll get to your team soon. I'm definitely looking to save a transfer. So I'm going to talk a bit more about my plans for next week as well. And I think a lot of you guys might have the same dilemma. So I'll just read out my team really quick. Kepa in goal, Trippier, White and Shaw. Rashford, Saka, Bruno, De Bruyne, Mitrovic, Haaland and Nketiah. So after I save a transfer this week, I can do Fernandes and Shaw in 25 for, let's say, Salah and a 4.4 defender. So I'll probably go for Kilman just purely he has the double, but I don't expect really him to get anything more than 2 to 3 points. Now, I can go for Trent in that spot, but then I would have to downgrade De Bruyne and I can go for a midfielder up to like 9.5, 10 million. Price isn't really an issue, but I'm struggling to identify that midfielder. And I think, Tom, we have very similar setup. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I mean, I can't do it. You can do Fernandes and Shaw and get Salah in with your free transfers, can't you, Zoph? I can't do that. I think if I'm a bit short on that, it leaves me only with something like 3.5 for a defender, which is obviously impossible. So I need to sell De Bruyne that week. I want to get Salah in, which I will. Whereas for you, yeah, it's a bit more interesting, isn't it? Because you can get to most midfielders, can't you? Get Trent in as well, which I'd be tempted by. But let's see how they look this week.
Yeah, but nobody jumps out at all. It's only Chelsea that I would feel I would possibly repay that, because I don't want to do it just for Trent. I want to have the upside in the midfielder and then Trent come in as well. I don't want to force a move where I just bring in somebody I don't really want in my team just for Trent, because I've seen the name Bowen thrown around a little bit and I don't trust West Ham still completely, personally.
So just a thought, if Patterson looks like he's going to be fit, and if you've got 3 playing at the back, then it might be worthwhile getting in a Brighton defender early for the double in 27.
Do they have anyone at 4.3, 4.4?
No one in that price bracket.
Yeah.
Dunk's 4.7, Estupinan 4.7, 4.5 Webster. So there's nobody there. But a thought in my head.
That's fair, because what I can do currently, I can possibly feel Levin with Patterson on the bench if I do the Fernandes and Shaw moves. And what I've read on Patterson is he's not in team training yet. Daesh mentioned that he's running by himself. So I don't think he will be fit for the double. That being said, Coleman was partly at fault for the Salah counter attack. His pace was exposed. There's a chance. But as Gandalf said, only a fool's hope.
Yep.
Next up, Tom, it's your team. It's just Gabriel instead of White. Otherwise, we have pretty much the same players. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to save a transfer this week, I think. The only decision I've got to make is if I'd start Bueno's on the bench. If I think he's going to get a start, I think that's a really nice fixture for him. I would potentially consider bringing him in for Trippier, but it does feel risky to came off the bench in the last one. So I would imagine it will stay as it is. I could do that Mitrovic to Felix transfer, but I don't think I'm going to do that. Then I take in 2 free transfers into 25. I think De Bruyne and Fernandes will probably depart for Salah and unknown fielder. And then it's whether I want to do Shaw to Alexander-Arnold for the hit for -4, which I probably will do. And I'm going back to that Brighton point, Pranil. I could bring in Matoma that week just to get me set up, stick him on the bench, which is something I might do because I can field hopefully 11 anyway. And then after that, yeah, it's probably Brighton and Brentford, aren't they?
Yeah, I like that. I think if you can't find a player, I have considered bringing in Estupinan instead of a playing defender who I'm not going to be comfortable holding in the future anyway, and just let go of one extra player in 25. And you can anyway field 11 anyway. So I think that's a fine route.
Yeah. And it's well, it's that slot as well. I could go for somebody like Sarabia, but then if I want to bring in Matoma, that's the spot in the team which it needs to be him. So you're kind of transferring somebody else in, giving them a double, and then taking them straight back in again. So it might just be better to just go for Matoma. Seems a bit crazy bringing a player in a blank, but quite a lot of strategy involved at the moment. And transfers are kind of precious, so not ruling that out.
I like it. I'm not against it at all.
Just quick question, Tom. You mentioned earlier you expect Villa to score. Would you play Tarkowski over White?
Tarkowski's got Leeds, hasn't he?
Leeds at Goodison Park.
No, I don't think I would.
Me neither.
Play White. I mean, I expect Villa to score, but you know, Arsenal could shut us out. I mean, Thomas Partey kind of feels key to that. I haven't had a fitness update on him. I don't know what Arteta said, but if he's back, then that obviously boosts Arsenal's clean sheet prospects a little bit. White's going to come back in, isn't he?
They've kept the most away clean sheets, I think, in the division. So they're actually a much better defense away from home, strangely enough. LR, your team?
Yeah, so at the moment, the only move if I make this week is Mitrovic to Felix, which means that I'm ruling out Darwin or Jota next week, and I get in Salah for De Bruyne, and then Trent for Shaw the week after. That's the route I'm looking at. If not, I save this week and I triple move next week, remove Mitrovic, De Bruyne, and Doherty maybe for if I'm going for a cheap. I can get Reece, I can get Darwin, and I can get Salah. So these are kind of my routes at the moment, and I'm contemplating whether I want to jump on Felix because it's not just this fixture, like the Southampton game, the Leeds game, the Leicester game, and there's one more game after that, the Everton home game in 28, right? Like there's brace potential in 2 out of 4 games. They're very high upside games, and even Spurs at the moment they have problems in defense. So it's the one I'm contemplating because I still love Darwin. So that's the one I'm struggling with. But I'm also thinking in my head that if I go for Reece and if I go for Felix and Trent over Darwin and Reece, I'm also winning the expected minutes game a little. But the upside is there with Darwin. That's the dilemma I'm facing.
You just want to rationalize bringing in a Chelsea player, mate. Just say that. It's fine.
Yeah. And also the other thing is, one thing I forgot to mention is selling Mitrovic this week also seems like something that's unnecessary because Brighton tend to play expansively and Fulham have struggled against teams that sit back. But I think teams like Brighton that like to play, it would suit Fulham. So that's where I am.
Right. Do we guys have time for a Q&A, guys? We've gone for pretty long today.
Any preference in terms of what you guys think over this 2-player dilemma, just as things stand? Tom?
I personally like the Felix Trent duo.
I'm on the same boat.
All right. Cool. Just one couple of quick questions. We had a super chat. Guys, we're not doing a Q&A today. Ankit Deb sent in a question. He already owns Tony and Raya. Would you sell Tony to Darwin in 25 and then get Tony back in 27? Ways to transfers there. What do you guys think?
I'll still probably do it. Because I don't even know you'll want Tony in 27. If he's on the 9 yellow cards thing and he has a blank in 28, things could get quite dodgy. Or he might already be suspended for 27 if he picks up, let's say, a yellow this week, then another yellow in 26. He'll possibly miss the first game of 27 then.
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously play him this weekend, don't you? But then if you really want Darwin and you think his minutes are going to be okay, yeah, I haven't got a problem with selling him and then bringing him back if you want to. I do think Tony could be quite important in that 27 because I think he's going to be very, very highly owned. He's put up some great numbers recently. He's got the best XGI in the league over the last 6. Brentford are in good moment, well, aren't they?
Top 5 for XGI, I think, since the restart. Brentford in general. Yeah. So
tough fixtures.
That's
great. They're very good at. I think they're unbeaten in 10, aren't they? Although Lee Mason but they are in a very good moment. They've got their 2 home fixtures now, haven't they? Either side of the blank, and I think if I'm right, they're both of them are away in the double. But I think Tony's going
to. Just potential news. Just check what Marco Silva says, but it looks like Mitro could potentially have a knock as well. So something to monitor there.
Ooh, that would make me definitely look towards Felix this week. How much is Felix?
And that would 7.5 million.
Ooh, I can afford that. Spider sense is tingling.
I had a quick look last night as well, and it was just doable. It was doable by 0.1, and I was like, "Ooh, okay." Let's see.
Yeah. And I mean, I can still, the thing that I'm comforting myself saying is I can still get Darwin for Felix next week and do the transfer again. It's an extra transfer chasing the upside. So that's how I'm consoling myself if I go the Felix way.
Right. Let's wrap up.
One last question, because I think it's an important question that Kamzi's asked, is how important is it to get Salah in 25? Because Kamzi can't get to Salah without selling Kane. I think it's worth it. What do you guys think?
There was a comment, and I want to point this out on the recap video we put out, that apparently the FPL Wire's biggest weakness is our love for Salah. And I think there is credit in the bank that he has built up. And ultimately, you put yourself in a position to get lucky. I went without Mahrez this week due to certain preconceived notions I had about him being a minutes race, etc., not being an option. But we need to be more open. Over a double, there is Hall potential, and you need to chase that.
Lovely. And on that note, thank you, Tom, for being with us today. We hope you guys enjoyed the show. And if you did, make sure hitting the like and subscribe button. And share the pod on Twitter, etc. if you like it. And thank you, Tom, for being with us. We hope that your arrows continue being green, and we hope to see you in the top 5K, 1K at the end of the season.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It's been good to chat. And yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll jump on again once there's a bit more clarity around 33, 34 or something like that, even if it's for a short one.
Definitely need to come on again soon, Tom. Been a pleasure having you. Thank you for coming.
Cheers. Take care, guys.
See you next week.